Okay, my name is Brandon, and you are listening to Unsigned BC. We are broadcasting live on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. We've got a very exciting interview with a sort of up-and-coming, if not very well-established already, videographer slash director, producer, sort of a figure in the music video industry. The name is Sabine Kahwaji. She is from Vancouver, and she is doing amazing work at the age of 23 years old. She's already worked with 21 Entertainment, Sony Music Canada, Tyler Shaw, a very impressive list. So check it out. Here's a little bit of wisdom with my interview with Sabine Kahwaji.
My name is Sabine Kahwaji. I'm based in Vancouver. I'm a director, editor, and producer. I started filming and editing, but I finally transitioned into directing and producing, which is what I really love to do.
Okay, actually, you know what? Right off the top, before I really get into sort of more of your background, I actually just want to ask a little bit about the distinction there. Like what exactly are you doing that is so different from what you're doing in terms of like editing and stuff? Like what is the role of the director and the role of the producer?
So director is more creative, which is what I love. You take care of, like, for instance, with music videos, which is my line of work. It's, creating the treatments, collaborating with the artist, making sure that the vision is right. It's all the creative realm, whereas producing is taking care of like the financials, the bookings, the planning. So it's basically nothing to do with creative so much. It's just ensuring that the creative vision can be brought to life within a budget. So I'm trying to take on either just producing or just directing, because both together I've done, but it's hard to give the same amount of energy to both roles because they're both very time consuming.
Right. And I'm assuming it's fairly common if you're not already like very, very well established, or if you don't get hired on with somebody. I'm assuming it's fairly common for somebody to be taking on both roles like earlier in their career.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially like for me, I wasn't involved in the band industry a lot until COVID happened. So I actually didn't know many producers to hop on to roles with me. And so I had to take those on for a couple big music videos. But I got the experience I needed, whereas now like I know producers I could reach out to. But initially I didn't. So it kind of made me have to jump into the role. And in turn, it was very beneficial because I can produce now, I would say. Fairly good at that.
Yeah, and it's always good to have a bit of business knowledge in what you're doing. I guess a good thing to ask, I guess, would be about your background, because you said you just started getting into music videos during COVID. Where did you start, and how did this whole thing sort of start? I mean, it's not something that you sort of go into lightly. It's there's some financial commitments, as I understand it. So
yeah, well, I don't know how far back I'll go, but I will say it's been a while. So I got introduced to film when I was 14. Fell in love with it, loved it right away. I also was like involved in a lot of music programs growing up, but I didn't see like music as a viable career for me. And so when I got introduced to film, I was like, oh, this is cool. There's potential here. And then after I graduated high school, I took the initiative to pursue it myself. And I was like, I'm going to save up, fund my own short film, and like, have that project that proves like, I'm taking this seriously. Like, this is something I want to do. And then, I released a short film called 17, and it did really well for like an 18-year-old short film. Like, it did pretty good. And then after that, I was like, okay, I want to delve into other roles, and I love music. So I was like, okay, music industry, film, why don't I do music videos and concerts and that? And then I kind of just went full out with networking and started doing concerts. I was like a concert videographer and editor for like 3 years. Like, that's all I did. And I
that's an industry, hey? Like I didn't.
Oh yeah.
Really, hey? So you that was your full-time work as and like really, that's fascinating. Wow. Okay, yeah, no, sorry, go ahead. But that's just amazing. I had no idea. So just for all the videographers out there, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually really fun. It takes a while to get the hang of it, and you start. At least for me, I started really like small indie bands. Like, I did not even fathom that I could like film for bigger artists. So I started with really small indie bands, and like no-name venues. And then from that, I just kept getting like more and more gigs, festivals. It's really fun, but I did it with the intention of becoming a director, because I don't love filming. I'll do it, and I know how to do it, but it's not my favorite line of work. But yeah, there's like an adrenaline when you're filming concerts, and I might actually start getting into it now in October again, because like concerts are up and running in Van. So just for fun, honestly, because it is fun. But yeah, I started with that, and then got to a point where my network got bigger, and I started landing bigger music videos, and I got one in the works currently. So it's exciting. And actually, sorry, I can talk for a long time. I was going to say, it's good to take on different positions earlier on, because I have knowledge of cinematography and editing. So when I work with the DOP, I can actually go deeper into like what camera settings are you using, like what's the camera, the lens, so I have like that side of things that I feel like if I didn't start off as a videographer, I honestly wouldn't know. So
yeah, and you've also got to handle on the budget side. So, if you're, you can't be, I don't know exactly how the technical mechanics of it work, but, you can't be doing certain shots if you're going to have to be doing so much editing, because you're going to have to be, it's good to have that production side as well as the technical side as a director. That's really, really insightful. You said you're working on something right now in terms of a music video. What is that?
I don't know how much I can share, but I have two music videos in pre-production. They're both fairly big, I would say, maybe a bit bigger than their stuff I've done so far. So I'm just happy.
So it's good, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so just happy with the fact that like each project is an improvement of my previous ones, because that's my goal, is to just keep like growing and improving. So yeah, it's exciting. It's fun.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Sabine. Let's take a quick break and play one of my favorite tracks to come through the station here. This is Waking Life by Howl. Now let's get back to my interview with Sabine Kahwaji, Vancouver director and producer. The film industry and media and music industry are all male-dominated fields. So you started off by yourself. It sounds like with your own, you did your sort of film that you made yourself, financed that, not sort of coming from a, sort of jumping on with some friends or that kind of thing. It's your, so that puts you in a sort of unique position to be reaching out to people as a woman in a male-dominated industry. So maybe if you could tell me a little bit about like what that was like, because I'm sure, like, of course, I don't have any perspective on that. So,
well, it varied on the role. So I will say, when I was a videographer, I don't know why no one. I think the name Sabine is not too common in Van or something, or in LA or Toronto, but a lot of times I would show up to concert gigs and I'd always get like a very shocked reaction. Like, I think they thought a dude was pulling up, and then it's me. Because really, like, every concert, the videographers were all guys. Like, I never saw, I saw women that were photographers, but I never saw like a videographer. And so I think every time I would actually show up to a concert, there'd always be this like, oh, like, that's you, like, kind of sort of reaction. But at first I used to kind of be like weirded out by that. And then I slowly was just got into the mentality of like, let the work do the talk and just do you, and, don't react to those reactions. And then as I got into bigger projects, there was just, a few instances where you feel like you get talked to a bit differently than your male crew members. And I had like a recent panel talk with a few women in film from like LA, and they've kind of had a similar experience. And it unfortunately seems to be a universal thing where like you get talked down to, or there's like expectations, or it's kind of weird. But I think I've just learned to let my work speak for itself, and just kind of like pick and choose who I work with, and set boundaries, and put my foot down. Because I think a lot of the time I was very like, it's okay, like, just push it, But now I'm much more like putting my foot down and being like, no, like, I'm the director and we're going with my call, and I'm not gonna, accept being talked down to in any capacity. And just in general, like, not just a gender thing, but I think on sets, the director, they set the tone for a set. And so I feel like if a director is okay with someone being talked down to or someone being treated bad, like that's just such a terrible environment to create on set. So I've really come over time, but I've come to a point where, especially the bigger sets I have, I'm just going to have talks with artists and crew members and be like, this is the standard we have and no one's treated any differently. But it was like, you notice it, like being a woman in a male dominated industry, you notice it. And fortunately, I've met a lot of women that are amazing that do film and we're able to like share similar experiences. But I think it's slowly changing, which is good. Like it's becoming, there's more women in film and in bigger roles too, which is nice.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. One thing sort of not entirely relevant to the answer, but I wasn't really aware, and I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to learn about, how the director sets the tone on the set. That's a really interesting thing to learn. It also, that really reminds me, like I was talking with Kelly Fleming. She was she still is, but she's a solo act, but she did a lot of work in a band. She's the lead of a band. And she was the lead member of the band, and she told me that every time they go to talk to the venue people or whoever the promoter is, they'd always talk to like the male guitarist or the male bassist, and that totally reminds me of that conversation that I had with her. That's really interesting. And of course, I guess it's not very surprising. But of course, you were also talking about collaborations and who you choose to collaborate with. That's a really important part of music as well, but of course, like all sorts of networking. Maybe if you could give the listeners and the young artists a bit of insight into how collaboration has worked for you, how it's benefited you. Sometimes I'm sure it doesn't work out so well, but if you give us a little bit of insight into sort of what it's like to have these different working relationships, because I'm sure you've collaborated with people from, like you said, indie bands at no-name venues to sort of bigger names now. So I'm sure there's all sorts of different takeaways that you've had from that.
Yeah. So it kind of shifted over the years. So when I started as a videographer, there wasn't much collaboration, I was just kind of doing my own thing. But when I got to like work with Sony, for instance, like Sony Music or like 21 Entertainment, like those kind of stuff, there started to be much more collaboration with the managers and with the labels as to like, okay, we like this edit, but we're going to need to do this and this. And so there was much more of a collaborative relationship, and that kind of introduced me to that realm of things. And so a big thing for me that I learned from a set, I think last year or so, was making sure that every crew member knows that like I'm a collaborative director. I like to be hands-on, and just clarifying those expectations when you hit set, because I find there are people who don't like collaborating at all. I think it's very important. I think it's key to work together and collaborate. I think that plays a factor in the success of a project, especially if everyone's equally as passionate about it. And so now I've learned to make it clear basically to any crew member that I'm working with, especially like key people like DOP, production designers, like this is a collaborative process. I'm going to be hands-on. It's not a one-man show. And that builds over time. And like, I think collaborative, that aspect ties into also like reaching out and helping people at the same time. I think that it all ties in together, because I feel like if you're a one-man show, it's only going to go so far. And so collaborating and reaching out to collaborate, that's how I've landed a lot of stuff, is reaching out and being like, hey, do you want to collaborate on this music video? Or this music video grant, and that like builds these relationships. Whereas if I'm sitting and doing it all myself and waiting, like I probably wouldn't have gotten like half the opportunities I got. So collaboration is very, very crucial and important. It's
like easy networking, right? Like
it ties into networking, and it's like also has to do with not thinking that you're like above anyone else. That's my thing, is I'm like, I'm going to collaborate with anyone. I'm going to try to do my thing, like, but I'm not going to think I'm too good to collaborate with certain people, because I think that just like blocks potential relationships in the industry that could be really good. So and helping people, it all ties into collaboration is what I've been learning.
No, and in terms of just to reflect that to sort of the hip hop artists that are listen to the show, I know a lot of people, you know, they want to get their like $50 or $100 or $250 for a feature or whatever they charge. But I have to say, you do whatever you like. But I think that if, you know, collaborating with someone, even if they're not nearly as half as popular as you, you're still going to get some benefits from, you know, getting in touch with their fan base. You're still going to have that connection if they have an opportunity. And I think you sort of highlighted that really well there. And I think, yeah, you gave an excellent answer. And I think to avoid myself having to do really much, if any, editing, I think I'll probably ask you just one more question here. I'll just ask you, you know, if you've got any advice for the young videographers out there who are just getting started and they don't know, you know, if they want to be into production or direction or director, you know, if they're still figuring out what they're doing and they don't know if it's the right field for them. Do you have any advice for, you know, somebody who's just dipping their toes in the water?
And I would say just like understanding that it's a process. The patience is highly needed in such a fast-paced industry like this, and understanding that you work your way up. Like there's a lot of success stories that are like, oh, I met this person and then they took me under their wing overnight and I became this. And it's like, those are very rare stories. Most of the time you gotta work your way up. And so I guess my advice would be like not to be closed off to certain opportunities. Obviously, you know, be aware of your surroundings, but just understand that you work your way up. And the days where it feels like, you know, hell to stay up and edit and film and rejection is very common, but I just look at it as redirection and then I keep pushing and moving forward. So patience is key, and just understanding that like it all pays off seriously, like one way or another. I wouldn't have thought 5 years ago that I'd be here.
Okay, that was my conversation with Sabine Kahwaji of Vancouver. Thank you so much, Sabine, for that. Some great insight for anybody interested in making music videos or really going out on their own in any sort of entrepreneurial industry in the arts or media.